Hey everyone, Matt Willis here, and welcome back to On the Mend. This is the podcast where we look back on life's toughest moments to learn how to move forward. We talk about the stuff most people avoid so we can try and show up better and live a little lighter. And I was trying to think about what to talk about in solo episodes, and I was like, this is happening to me right now. It's September, and the kids are back at school, which has kind of made me think a lot about parenting. Parenting has been one of the biggest teachers in my recovery. You know, not just about staying clean, but learning how to show up for them and in life. You know, being someone that my kids are going to feel proud of is a massive thing. Even when I'm tired, when I'm triggered by something, when I'm unsure of myself, sometimes I overthink, but I have to remind myself that I'm trying to make the best decision that I can in that moment. And sometimes I get that wrong, you know, and that's okay, you know, but we have sometimes a split second to say something, to do something, and you will get that wrong. And that's okay, you know, because you're in the moment, bang, you know. But when you do, it's very important to go back and say, you know, I was wrong about that. And that's because of this, you know, or I just got it wrong. I ballsed up, sorry. And I talked to them about my life, you know, I talked to them about maybe why I was triggered there, or why I reacted that way. And I think that's been really positive for them, you know, and it's really positive for me too, because I can really look at it. Not just looking at what kind of dad I want to be, but how much being a parent has shaped my recovery and how much it's, you know, made me look at myself differently, you know, reflecting on my behavior, you know, and how much kind of being a parent shines a light on you, you know, and it's kind of a mirror showing you, you know, these are little versions of you in a way. And what version of you do you want them to be? Okay, right, before we get into it, if you've been listening to this podcast and it's helped you feel seen, understood, or maybe a little bit less alone, you know, the best thing you can do is hit follow. It helps us grow, helps us reach more people, and helps us keep going. Thank you if you're following the podcast. It really, really does amazing things for us, and we really, really appreciate it. Right, should we get into it? Okay, let's be clear, right? This is not a how to be a perfect parent podcast, right? Because I am not the perfect parent. I make mistakes far too often, some of them glaring at me, you know, and it's quite shocking when that happens and you're like, oh, I need to address something. I get things wrong all the time, you know, and it's, but I'm very quick to understand when I'm getting things wrong. You know, that's something I've had to learn along the way, is that it's okay to admit that you're wrong. When I think back to being a kid myself, I never had that. I never had someone saying, sorry, I got that wrong, or I didn't mean to do that. And, you know, it's not a woe is me story, but like I'm very prepared to say to them, I was wrong there, I'm sorry. And I didn't mean to, I was a bit of a dick then. And it's because of this. So the kids are back at school, right? And I've been sitting with this kind of quite weird feeling, because part of me, if I'm honest, is relieved, right? They're back at school. I like structure. I like routine. I didn't used to. I used to like living wild and free. Now I really thrive knowing I can do certain things in my day and that I can get what I need to get done, you know, and I can settle myself and kind of feel like I'm in control of my day a little bit. And when the kids are off school, it's a bloody nightmare because all that goes out the window. You know, my kids want to stay up really late on the school holidays, and they should be able to, right? They really want to do it. And however much I think that, oh no, you should be in bed, you should get good sleep, you know, they sleep in late, you know, they just want to kind of feel like that. So I would love it if they didn't, but they do, right? And that throws my routine out of the window because I want to go to bed at say 10:30 and they want to watch Moana 2 on the telly. And it's like, no, because that means I've got to stay up and watch it. And that means I'm not going to be able to get up and do what I need to do in the morning. You know about my morning routine. It's really, really important to me, blah, blah, blah. And I really struggle with that because it's like, I feel really selfish about my wants and needs when they just want to be kids and they want to do what they want to do. But I do need these things in my life. Like I perform better with them. I'm a better father when I've done these things. You know, I'm a better husband, I'm a better work colleague. Everything kind of seems to go better. And just because they're on holiday doesn't mean I'm on holiday. So I really struggle with that, you know. So it's, I know I'm probably not alone in that. if you're out there and you kind of struggle with those holiday kind of moments when they're off school for what feels like a bloody eternity, it's really hard. And so getting back to school is kind of a real good moment. You can kind of go, right, okay, here we go, time to reset. So if you've been through all that during the holidays, maybe you've lost it a little bit. Maybe you've kind of like felt like you've, not been the best version of yourself you probably could be. Relax. I just want to let you know that you're doing better than you think, and your kids think more of you than you could possibly imagine. It's hard being a parent, and sometimes I feel like you're allowed to feel a little bit flat. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to be all over the place, But now is the time when you can reset. I think we sometimes have this idea of going, January is the only time we can reset and kind of start whatever we want, which is madness. We can start whenever we want. Like, you can decide right now, do you know what? Let's reset. Let's get down to business. Let's start living the life that we want to live and the person we want to be. You can do that whenever you want, and you can do that right now. And now is a good time to start. As always, on the mend, I share my gratitude list. So here we go. What am I grateful for today? It seems only fitting on this topic that I'm grateful for my kids. They've just gone back to school, right? I watched them going to school. When I think back to going to school when I was a kid, I hated it. Hated everything about school. I hated the fact I had to go there. I hated the fact I had to sit in lessons I didn't understand, and I watch my kids do it, and they're cool. They're kind of like, they go in, they're like, cool, see you later. It's like, wow. That's such a different reaction to what I had. I dreaded it. If I could get out of it in any way, I would. So I'm really proud of them, and I watch them go in, and it makes me feel, talking about it now, a bit emotional about them. They're good kids. And that's good to see. Second thing I'm grateful for the people that my kids are becoming. It's amazing to watch your kids growing up. Scary sometimes, to watch them kind of getting older and feel that you're losing that kid part. But what I love about that is I kind of constantly have this new relationship with them. It changes, and it's like, and each part of it is cool. My oldest is 16 now, and I have such a different relationship with her right now than what I did 2 years ago. It's so different, but it's still rad. And she still comes to me for advice and stuff, which is awesome. It makes you feel good. I'm like, wow, you're asking me for advice. Cool. Do you know me? Maybe you shouldn't. Right. Third thing I'm really grateful for is being clean and sober, because that allows me to be the dad that I want to be. When I was using, everything was about that. That came before everything. Now, that is not part of my life. And that's such an incredible feeling to be able to say, I'm not hiding anything. I'm not wanting to be somewhere else. And that makes me be present and makes me enjoy being a parent and every part of it, even the shit times. Right, I just wanted to give a massive shout out to someone who sent in their gratitude list. This is from Finn, and they have said, here's my gratitude list. 1, I'm grateful for my parents helping me get my name legally changed to my preferred name this year. Number 2, I'm grateful for my teachers, parents, and friends who helped me through my GCSEs. Just finished mine this summer. Well done. 3, I'm grateful for my friends that always listen to me talk about my interests and feel comfortable around me to talk about theirs. How cool's that? Never done one of these before, but hearing you talk about yours has helped inspire me, and I think I'll do one every morning now. Yes, Finn. Love it. This is so cool that Finn got in touch, right? Because it's obviously a young person listening to this and has been inspired to write a gratitude list. Sometimes at the dinner table, I ask my kids what they're grateful for. And it's been really interesting because at first I was so awkward and weird about it, and which I can understand. It's quite a kind of strange thing to be introduced to. But now I love it, and I ask them, what are you grateful for? And they have a little think and they say something. Sometimes it's massive. Sometimes it's really mundane. But I love both of those answers. It can be anything. It's like, what makes you feel grateful? It can really change the way you feel. And for me, gratitude lists have been massively important. And I can't thank you enough for getting in touch, Finn. Thank you so much. Please, guys, send me a gratitude list. I love reading them. My current health routine, I take heights. I take vitals for brain energy, sleep. I take biotic for all kind of gut health and immune system. And I take Hydrate, which is Hyatt's new electrolyte drink. That's kind of it.
What flavour is the electrolyte drink that you take?
I drink the peach one. It's nice. There's a mango one, which is also very nice, but I like the peach one. To be honest, I heard about Vitals first, but then when I got Vitals, I also ordered their probiotic because I've always wanted to take a probiotic and I'd never really bothered with it before or been consistent with it. I mean, it's a bit gross, but like it helps everything to do with your gut, right? So like your gut is your second brain. It does so much for your body. I honestly think everyone would benefit from this. Your brain health will improve, you'll kind of feel a bit clearer and your gut health will improve. And also I think I suffer with getting enough electrolytes. So to know when I'm drinking water, I'm getting electrolytes in, that's a big for me. To get everything, just head to heights.com/OTM and use the code OTM20 to get 20% off your first subscription. Okay, let's be honest. Parenting is amazing, but it's absolutely mental. I mean, you are in charge of kind of navigating someone into being an adult. That's so weird, and at times I can feel like, I don't know if I've got this locked in. I don't know if I'm doing it right. Who am I to tell you what to do? But sometimes they tell me what to do, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. When I think about when I first became a parent, right, the only job I had was to keep this little tiny thing alive for 24 hours. Like that was the task, right? You got this tiny baby and you're looking at it going, is it breathing? Is it all right? Just keeping it alive was enough. And then they start walking, talking, kind of doing their own thing. And then you're like, right, you hear a lot about what you're supposed to do as a parent. But really, when I think about it, right, being a parent is trying to like encourage these kids, encourage this little person to become who they want to be, not who you want them to be, which is a big thing, right? A lot of parents kind of want them to be a certain way or behave a certain way. I want them to be who they want to be, as long as they're not a little dick. I just want them to be like, what are you into? What's your thing? Let's go for that, and if they're into something, even if it's for a fleeting moment, I encourage it. And, sometimes to my detriment, but like if they're into something, I'm like, right, I'm encouraging on that, because I know how important it is to find something you love. And we've been through so many different things. And when I think back to a mistake I made being a parent, right, I read somewhere that someone said when their kid wants to do something, if they want to try something, say it's trampolining or gymnastics or something, they made them sign a contract that they would do it, but they had to stick to it for 12 weeks. So I remember making my kids sign a contract, right, to go to gymnastics. They wanted to go to gymnastics and I made them sign a 12-week contract. I wrote it out. They had to put their name on it to kind of commit to it because I was sick of doing like free lessons and not following through. Such a terrible idea. Like which kid understands or cares? Why is my dad making me sign a contract? This is the stuff that you read about parenting. You're like, oh, that must be a good idea. What was I thinking? I think we still lasted like 3 or 4 weeks and we gave it up, but yeah, it's really difficult, kind of learning what works and what doesn't for you as a parent. I think some days I feel like I've got it all under control and other days I'm literally in the past found myself counting the minutes down to bedtime because it's chaos, and I used to find, I don't know what it is about that time of night, but like 6 p.m, 5 till 7 p.m. is like the witching hour. And it was the most testing time for me because I feel like everything's kind of like your life is winding down and the last thing they want to do is wind down. And I found that really testing. That's when I think a lot of families will relate when things can snap and things can kind of, get a little bit ratty, that kind of bath time, bedtime kind of experience, And what I found to do was to try and find a way of enjoying that. Right, because it's very easy with younger kids for me to kind of try and go, no, calm down, do this, sit down, you got to chill out because you got to go to bed because I want you to, the last thing kids want to do is that. They want to be, all over the place. And to allow them to be all over the place for a period of time, knowing that you've got to put them to bed, but like not trying to wind them down was a real big thing for me because I was like, no, we need to get a nighttime routine. We need to settle into this. You have a bath, then we read a book together. It's perfect, it's picturesque, that didn't work for us. It's like, right, they're going to be absolute chaos for the next 2 hours. I'm going to allow them to be chaos. And then when they go to bed, I'm going to clean it all up. That was something which kind of worked for us. And, and they would be like that. They'd be a little bit chaotic. And then I'd play with them in that time and we'd have real fun. And it became a really enjoyable time as long as I was ready to turn up for that, because I knew it was happening. So I started to prepare myself, right, this is going to be chaos. It's going to be all right. And actually I had real fun rolling around, like mucking about. There was real fun times. I look back at that and I'm sure they loved it too. Rather than me go, no, stop it, sit down, let's read the Gruffalo again. It was like a much different experience, but it was super fun. And I think when I look back to those times, I really enjoyed them. And I think they did too. And it makes you closer, rather than trying to breathe down the neck and make them do what you want to do. So what do you want to do? Right, is that okay for me? Yeah, it's not that bad. It's not ideal. In ideal, we'd all be sitting down, singing Kumbaya and then going to bed. But that's not the way that my family worked. And that was okay. Because actually, that's not the way I work. I'm not like that either. Sometimes I hear myself say something and I think, where did that come from? And when I think about it, it came from my childhood, which is really bizarre because when I look back at my childhood, I don't dwell on anything, but I don't think it was a particularly great one. So why am I trying to pass something on that I don't believe in onto these kids that are great? And it's and I think it's just subconscious. It's just in you, and I say some things which really let me down. And one of them slapped me in the face recently. A little while ago, I heard my eldest say, I feel embarrassed saying this out loud, but, I heard my eldest turn around and say, second place is first place loser, right? That was me. I said that shit. And I was so shocked when it came out of her mouth, because that's a very different version of me, and that's something which I got, told, and I was never really, I can't believe I said it, but she must have been holding on to that. She's very competitive, very, very competitive, not in a bad way, not in a kind of really kind of like arsehole way, but she's very competitive. And I was like, wow, I cemented something in your head that you've been living with that I don't believe in, that I actually think is really bad advice. It's fundamentally a wrong message that was in her head. And what I was trying to get across with that message was very different to the one I gave her. What I was trying to tell her was, I want you to be a valued member of something. But if you're doing it, that there's something that I like, which is how you do anything is how you do everything. And I try to do that. Like I try to kind of do everything to a certain, if I'm going to do it, let's really do it. Let's not half-ass it. Let's really go for it. And if you're going to half-ass it, why bother? Because you're not going to get any result from it. So I was trying to kind of give her that message, of like, if you're going to show up, let's show up. But I got in her head that if you're not winning, you're losing. And that was a terrible message. I had to really sit her down and say, I'm so sorry for doing that, and she was quite shocked when I was talking about it. Like, it was kind of like, what are you saying? And I was like, wow, you've been living with this. I've really, really massively mucked up, and it took a bit of a chat, but she understood where I was coming from with it. And I think she's kind of readdressed that in her head now. She's still bloody competitive. Don't play Monopoly with her. But she's, well, I think I got across where I mucked up and we've been able to move forward with it. But that's just part of parenting, right? You do things, and I think you have to be able to go, I was wrong and I didn't mean that, and I'm sorry. And it's just part of being a parent. Right, so here's some of the stuff I'm actively trying to get better as a dad, right? I'm trying to get better at saying sorry. Just like the story I just told you about giving bad advice. I'm trying to be able to, I don't know, there's something about us sometimes where we don't want to admit we're wrong. And I am trying to get over that in so many aspects of my life. And being a parent is a massive, massive thing where you have to be able to say that. And I'm trying to get much better at, do you know what? Not going, it's okay, let's move on. Going, no, actually, this needs to be addressed right now. And I'm sorry. Next thing I'm working on is, this is really difficult sometimes, but trying to allow them to feel their feelings, right? Because there's something within a parent which doesn't want your child to be hurt, doesn't want your child to be upset, doesn't want them to have to go through something. So you try and kind of stop it, like if they're behaving a certain way, if they're upset, if they're angry, if they're whatever that is, you try and kind of like stop it, whoa, no, that's okay, everything's all right, and actually you need to be able to feel these feelings, right? They're all valuable, and they're all part of being a human. You have to be able to feel anger if you're cross. You have to be able to feel upset, and you have to be able to cry. And this comes back to me, right? Because I didn't cry till I was 30, never, maybe even later than that. I can't remember where it was, but I just had a problem with it. I just literally couldn't do it. Like the saddest thing would happen. I remember my granddad dying, right? And I loved that guy. I went to his funeral, didn't shed a tear. Everyone was crying around me. There's something within me that's just was like, no, nothing. I was sad. I was really upset, but I couldn't make any tears come. It was just like something locked in me, and then something changed, and bang, I cried at Paddington 2. So something kind of changes in you, but it took a long time for me to get there. And I think that's part of like my upbringing, like when I was a kid, if I cried, it just made things worse, so I kind of learned from an early age, no, it's all good, bang. That's not helpful. It definitely didn't help me. So allowing your kids to kind of go through these emotions and really live them and really feel them, and and not just going, okay, you go and cry in the corner, going through it with them sometimes and going, what are you feeling? Why is this happening? What's going on for you? And you'd be amazed at the answers you get, and amazed at what actually is going on with them and how emotionally intelligent they can be. It's been an incredible experience for me. Big one for me is not trying to be perfect. As a parent, you kind of want to be able to give these amazing essays on whatever they're going through, or you want to be able to pass on this kind of like persona of being perfect and like not ever wrong. And that's been a real thing for me. I never wanted them to think that I ever struggled, and that wasn't helpful for them, and it wasn't helpful for me. I think something about parenting I'm kind of learning is, what I think I've learned is that, like in anything, there is no such thing as perfect. But the one thing you can be is consistent. And for me as a parent, I really want to be consistently there. I work a lot and I work away quite a bit, but which can give me this kind of guilt sometimes, but I'm always there whenever they need me. And when I'm there, I'm fully there. Talking about this, right? I read this thing. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday, and on Instagram, he's got this thing called Daily Dad. He's actually got a book, which I read, and like every day you read this passage about being a parent, about being a dad. And he was talking about Jerry Seinfeld, talking about junk time. What Jerry Seinfeld was talking about was that he enjoys the junk time, the having Cheerios at 11 o'clock when they're supposed to be in bedtime, the sitting on the sofa, watching some kind of thing that they want to watch. We do a lot of that in my house. My kids control the TV, and I've watched so many terrible shows that they put on, and I sit there and I sit through it, but I still enjoy that time when you're missing out on all this amazing time with them. Because you have so much time with your kids that you don't really appreciate probably until it's gone. And I want to feel like that. So I'm trying to enjoy it all the time, trying to enjoy that junk time and really fully embrace it. Being a dad for me is quite challenging at times, because when I think about it, I didn't really have that kind of figure in my life. I didn't have that. I don't really have a role model to kind of model this on, or like a perfect kind of like picture of what I think that is. Since being married to Emma, I've met her dad, right? Who's this kind of like unbelievable guy. Who's the most calm, he's got such a calming influence over everybody. And he's just like a really good, amazing guy who I massively look up to. I never really had that as a kid. So I'm trying to kind of build that now from scratch. And I want them to think of me that way. The way Emma thinks of her dad and the way I think of her dad. I want my kids to feel like that about me. And that's something that drives me to try and make better decisions, drives me to try and be a better father. And I can see it happening sometimes, and it really feels good. And now my kids ring me. You know, if I'm away, like I get a phone call from one of them, and they ask me something. I'm like, so cool that you call me. You know, you don't just ask whoever's there. You know, I'll read that about it. I'm like, so wicked when they do that. I love it. You know, getting a text message that isn't just okay is the coolest thing in the world. So I do love it. When I think about it, my kids have taught me more about life than most adults, which is bizarre. You know, when I think about it, they've taught me to slow down, which is a massive thing for me. They've taught me to listen rather than try and get my point across. They've taught me to play. You know, I always thought I was quite playful anyway, but they've really taught me to play. They've taught me to be honest. They've taught me to be really, really honest, and how important being honest is, because kids see through the act. You know, they actually see who you really are, and they know when you're bullshitting. They know when you're saying something that you don't really feel or you know not to be true. They can see that shit. That used to scare me, knowing that they could see me. They could really, really see me. But now I think it's helped me become more of who I actually want to be. Right, if you're a parent, or even if you're working on becoming the kind of person who can one day become a great parent, I'd love to hear from you. You know, what is the biggest thing you've learned through parenting? What are you trying to do differently to how you were raised? DM me your story, and if you're happy for me to share it, please let me know. I'll read a few out on the show. Your answers help me shape what questions I should ask my guests, which is really important. We have guests in there all the time. I want to know what you want to know from these people. You know, so please get in touch. I do use them when I'm doing my research. I have your stories in mind, so please do share them. It's really, really helpful. Guys, parenting is hard. You know, it's not a breeze. It's the best job in the world. It's the most important job in the world, but it's bloody hard, right? But what is worth having that isn't hard? You know, like when you think about it, everything that you want is hard to do. You know, and if it was easy, everyone would have it. You know, so it is hard. It's really difficult to do. But recovery is hard, right? So doing them both at the same time, well done. You know, you're doing great. That's really, really next level. But here's the truth, right? You are allowed to get it wrong. You're allowed to be learning. This is a process, right? And if you keep showing up, keep doing the work, keep trying to be doing it differently, then you are actually on the mend. Guys, once again, thank you so much for being on this journey with me. I love that we're building this little community of people. I love it. I love hearing from you. You know, we've been posting stuff on social media, and reading your comments is so cool that you listen, you know, because we put this out into the world, right? Then you kind of remove yourself from it in a way, you know, so I love being actively involved in it, and I love hearing from you. If you enjoyed this show, please hit follow and share it with another person who might need to hear it. I get people passing these podcasts on to other people, which I think is really, really important. I get past podcasts that I should be listening to, you know, and I do love it, you know, so please pass it around, hit follow if you can, and keep in touch at on.the.men.podcast. If anything in this episode brought stuff up for you, or if you're struggling, you're not alone. There are trusted support services listed in the show notes. Guys, please check them out. If you're struggling, we've got your help.